Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Jacob Chavi, Coach Chavi. I'm going to show you around the garden, kind of explain my two gardening zones. I have my run and I have the big boy. So I'm going to show you what the big boy really is. So this gardening area is what I call the big boy. It is a raised bed made of almost all repurposed parts. So these are almost like railroad ties. I found a business in town that had big wire spools and they would stack the spools on top of these. So I just stopped in there and asked them if maybe they'd be okay with me taking these out of their basically trash form. So I snagged those, took them all apart, and then played with a layout. So I have basically about 4 foot, so 4 growing zones this way, and then the length is about 8 feet. It runs east to west that way. This is the north side of the garden. Now I stacked all these up, and I have one big bed that I call the big boy, but I have 2 separate beds really built in because I have this one in between. It kind of gave me the most square footage. So this gives me an extra foot on this bed. Probably moving too fast and have a little bit too much math, but that kind of gave me a shelf down the middle too, so I can kind of hide cuttings, or I can kind of put stuff in there too in pots. Now, something that I think is super important when you're going to decide that you're going to start gardening or you're going to do something like this is to watch your area. So before I ever built this big bed, I actually used these 2 blue pots and grow bags, and I grew in this zone back here in the southwest corner of my yard to kind of see what would work. So I started with those, and I grew tomatoes and peppers in them for a season or 2, and I had some grow bags, and I grew some other vegetables, and I started to notice everything did pretty good over here. They got plenty of sun, so I knew that this spot in my yard would be a really good spot. I also tracked some trees to make sure that my trees wouldn't shade out my area, and then also my fence. So I actually grew some stuff along the fence to see what would grow there. And here in West Texas, because we get so much morning sun and heat, it wasn't a problem. So this area ended up being a really good spot for the garden. And whenever we did our landscape and we had our landscaper come, I made sure to put a water source really close, so I have a spigot close to my garden. And then I also made sure to leave this zone open for our garden. So like I mentioned, we did have our yard kind of xeriscaped or landscape to help with this desert area. And we tucked the garden back away, kind of hidden. So as we come around the landscape area, all of this section, we put in all this granite, and I have my garden area. Again, I call that bed the big boy bed. And I made sure that we had a water source here. So this was something that was really important because this is in the farthest corner of my yard. I wanted to make sure I had water, and then from there have my whole watering set up and my drip system set up in here. So something else I did was, as I built this, I used the hugelkultur method. So this bottom section, which it actually divides out pretty well, this bottom section is almost all sticks, logs, leftover debris from my house. The next layer was a whole bunch of wood chips and leaves. I would water that down and then walk inside of the bed to kind of smush it down. And then this top layer is MEL S MIX, which I got from the Square Foot Gardening book. So that's going to be 1/3 of compost, 1/3 of perlite, and then 1/3 of coconut coir or peat moss. I used coconut coir, and then I amended with a few different things as I went. But the majority of my bed is that MEL S MIX, and it has worked great. I've had this bed for about, I would say 3 years now. Coming up on this next season will be my 4th season, and every year it's gotten a little bit better, a little bit better. The shade structure has been a constant evolution. So these are actually aluminum. And I actually found that again at work. So I was at work, and I work in the construction industry. I do construction equipment sales, and they had some machines. I'll pop a picture up, a man lift that had an aluminum rail, and I was trying to figure out how to make a canopy to put my shade cloth up, and these actually worked so good. So they're super lightweight but strong. So I made sure to anchor them in really tight with some big lag bolts that go all the way in. And then I also have some, they're hard to see because I painted everything because I didn't want you to see it, but I also have some little hardware to keep them sturdy. So these are on here really tight, and they have to be, because out here in West Texas, what everybody else would call a hurricane, we call a Tuesday night. So we'll get winds in the hundreds sometimes. So this thing has to be super sturdy. So I use my aluminum beams, and then I just got some one bys and threw those up. This is all like leftover wood or leftover project wood I had, and I bolted those up. And then I got my measurement, and then I put my shade cloth up. And the shade cloth goes up every about May. In May, we'll start getting up to 100 degrees. So with my big boy bed, I really try to pack in the garden. I use square foot gardening, and I still kind of overplant it anyway. So a lot of times I'll do my square foot method, and I may add a few extra plants to see what can hang. Another thing is, I wanted this structure to be alive. So I have a lot of vining plants climbing it. I have some yard-long beans, and then you'll notice I started adding in some pots here and there. So really want to maximize the space and the production in this area. And I wanted it to feel like every time you come to the garden, maybe you notice something different or you notice another plant. And that was kind of my goal. Probably overpacked it a little bit, but it's really nice when you're sitting back here and you can kind of almost every day pick up something different every time you spin around. So here's an example of my beam that I put in. Then I put some tapping screws, and I'm just using jute twine to run up that beam. And now we got beans hanging down. And then I just put screws along, let me get you out of the sunlight, screws along this edge, so the beans will run along there too. So in the beginning, it just looks like a skeleton of jute twine, but eventually these should climb all the way across and just add another layer of life. And then in here, most of the time, these drain and get hot super fast, especially in the summer. So sunflowers, there's a little tomato right here. So here's a little, like, you know, tiny Tim. On this side, I think I got some basil, Thai basil, and some little teddy bear sunflowers. So something else I have in my garden is a Dollar Tree tower. So similar to a green stalk, but basically just went to Dollar Tree, and then through the middle right here, you can't see it, there's actually a metal conduit that runs all the way down the center. And like I said, these beams that came from wire reels had bolts through them, so there was already a hole for me to put that piece of conduit. So now I just grab the bottom every day or so, rotate it, we're good to go. So I got some moss rose in here right now. Had some flowers up top, I had to flip them, so now I got some new flowers coming in. And then I ran my drip line over here, so I have my drip emitter at the top. And that's the tower in the corner. So again, another little space saver. Try to get as much out of it as I can. So this is probably one of my favorite things about the big boy bed is this trellis wall. So I have two hog panels that run the length of the bed, and this is where I weave my tomatoes and I create my tomato wall. Something I added this year, I'll bring you in closer, is I added some twine to kind of run the tomatoes up. But I think it's really cool when you walk up, it's almost like the tomatoes seal off the rest of the garden and hide it from you. So it's almost like a secret tomato garden. So like I said, I have my bed here, have some support structures, and I have my actual wall. So that is probably, it's as tall as my shed, so about 8 feet tall. Sometimes I do got to break the ladder out. And what they are, it's harder to see on this side, but maybe it's a little easier here. So I have these hog panels that go up, and what I do is I weave those tomatoes in and out, kind of like a Florida weave style. And then when they get to the top, I'll push them out of the top, and these will actually end up draping all the way back down to the ground. So this is a Hot 100, little small tomatoes. I'm going to eat that. Delicious. Next to it, I got a large cherry tomato, and this one every year has done good. I've saved these seeds, so this is becoming my Permian Basin large cherry tomato. I'm on the 3rd year of this one, so I'll save some of these towards the end of the year and grow them. I do have some okra interplanted, so I had some like spring crops that I had, and those came out, and then some okra came in, so this okra is about to get going. That's something nice with having this wall, is it kind of drapes a lot of these tomatoes out of the garden and keeps it pretty tidy on the north side. So my whole garden bed in here isn't just filled with tomatoes. It keeps it tidy, it keeps it off to the north side, and I've seen great production out of it. Haven't seen it get hurt by anything by being set up like this. I also have a beefsteak tomato, which kind of grows in both sections. If it throws a runner out here, I'll let it go up. Got a Floridade tomato, which mine have been kind of small compared to that large cherry. And then this has been probably an epiphany of a tomato for me. Oh, there's one in here, and that is the, oh man, it got end rot, Lucky Tiger. So this tomato has been probably, between this and the Dwarf Rosella Purple, my favorite tomato. So I take these, here's a good example. I cage them, get them going, and then once they get into the trellis system, they get woven in and out. And this year I've added a string that runs up to the top, so that way I can kind of keep supporting these tomatoes as they grow up. And that's on the north side, and that's what I call the tomato wall in the big boy bed. Now, of course, my 8-foot by 5-foot section just didn't feel big enough. So I do have grow bags, and I have some other things growing on the outside. A lot of flowers. You know, I want to bring in these pollinators. I got my zinnias, got my amaranth that looks great. And there's a few other pots. I need to redo these. I'm actually probably going to redo these this weekend. So these are another little tower. That's one of the Amazon towers. And I built a little stand for it to get it up off the ground where it's not blocking my other bed. And I actually have a turntable underneath it, so this one spins as well. So I think I had a bad soil mixing in this one, like it's just holding too much water and drowning things. So I'm gonna redo this one, reset it, and maybe I'll get some better production out of it. These don't do so well here in the summer just because I have one here and I have one up there. They just get blasted with sun and they end up drying out. But in the fall, these are awesome because you can just stack them with, you know, small herbs, or you can just throw in tons of lettuce and get great production out of them. But in the summer, they kind of give up the ghost on me. Again, I got these extra pots. I'll just have herbs and flowers around trying to pull in pollinators. I do have stuff around the big boy bed, and I do have my second section, but you're gonna have to watch video 2 to check out the run. I did have a full sheet, like a layout of the garden, and I'll pop that up so you can kind of see it as I'm talking about it. But the way I've basically laid my garden out is that back tomato wall's the north, so that's going to be my tallest plants. There's another row after the tomatoes, but I can't harvest stuff from there, so it makes it really hard to actually grow anything because I can't reach in there. So whenever you're doing your beds, you got to think about how far can my arm reach. So I can actually reach that from over there, but right here basically have one tomato plant, the Saucy Mary, that I can reach. That's like right here, and one okra plant, but everything in there is going to be, I can't reach from here to the other side. So that's all my herbs and flowers and everything else. On the borders, I still have some taller plants. So tall north side, a row of flowers and herbs. I have another row right here, and this is like my tomato pepper row. And this front one gets hit with sun, and I typically rotate this out. So early on in the season, I'll have onions and carrots. Then I rotated in beans. I really like having things that drape over and hang over the beds. I think it makes it look more organic. It doesn't look so linear and square. So that's why, again, I like having these other things out. But got my cucumbers hanging over. Got some melons coming behind it. And right now I got a big run of cowpeas going. So these guys are starting to set up. They've done great in the summertime. These didn't get hit with pest pressure near a little bit. I sprayed last night, but not nearly as bad as my my beans did. So beans just got beat up. I got some Bubba dwarf okra right here. That's what was also in this tower. And it's a similar setup over here. It's basically a carryover from that bigger side to the small side. Sometimes I can change it up over here if I want to put something in specific, but I just cut out cucumbers. I got a bunch of I had to put down a bunch of DE, as you can see. I was getting beat up with some bugs, so we're fighting these guys. They really love to come after these pumpkins, so I'm trying to make sure my pumpkins don't get murdered before they do anything. So I got some little like jack pumpkins I want to drape out the front. Some Thai basil, marigold, variegated candy cane. Those aren't tomatoes, those are actually Turkish eggplant. Watch the short on those. This big pepper, which is significantly bigger than I thought it would be, is a Hatch green chili pepper. If ever I had those. I got a Jimmy Nardello hiding in here. Got some habaneros hanging out. This is a small bell pepper, and it's actually setting a ton of fruit. That's a Rosella purple dwarf tomato. This is my #1 tomato this season. I hope I get more. It's been one of my favorites. Again, cucumber. Got a whole bunch of black-eyed peas, and like I said, interplanted in here. I got flowers, I got marigold, got some okra. There's another little pumpkin that's running. Then I have all my flowers up front, my zinnias. The beans climbing, so those are yard-long beans climbing up. Got some more beans trying to kind of climb here. And then all my tomatoes that I talked about. All right, YouTube, that's the big boy bed. This is my main growing section using the square foot method. And I've used almost all reclaimed materials. Budget wise, the biggest thing is obviously the soil when you're filling something up this big. So that's why I went with the hugelkultur method. It was raised so big because I had Great Danes and I didn't want them getting into my garden. So this whole area needed to be up off the ground a little bit, but it's all worked out very well. So keep your eyes open when you're at work, or when you're, out and about in town. Maybe you can find you some beams or some pallets and make you a raised bed, or start small, start in some containers, start in some pots, find you a spot in your yard and build it up from there. Thanks for walking around with me. If you got any questions or comments, throw them down in the comment section below. Like, follow, subscribe, and hopefully I can take you on a tour of section 2, which is a brand new section for me this year, the run. All right, guys, see y'all later.